Mr. Speaker, I've listened to the arguments from the other side of the aisle on this. I've heard the pro-choice rhetoric. I've heard the slogans. And now I'd like to talk about the words that are actually written on both of this amendment and the ballot question. The specific words, the specific language that we are asking voters to enshrine in the Constitution of Virginia forever. Unlike that pesky redistricting amendment, which is only for 5 years. Weird. Anyway, just like the redistricting amendment, I believe Virginians deserve to understand what this abortion amendment actually does, as compared to what the ballot question presented to us today says. This amendment extends constitutional immunity to unlicensed providers of any goods or services aiding or assisting another's exercise of their reproductive freedom. Yes, each one of us here would be given constitutional amendment or constitutional immunity from prosecution should we aid or assist in an abortion. I'm certainly not qualified to do so. Perhaps some of our medical professionals here are. Either way, we're all covered. Should something go wrong, we cannot be penalized or prosecuted at all. The language is pretty straightforward on this. Quote, "The Commonwealth shall not penalize, prosecute, or otherwise take adverse action against any individual for aiding or assisting in the exercise of this right." Any individual. This presents a major problem I think that my colleagues will want to address before sending this language to the voters. Any individual can also include those who are looking to do harm to others, right? I know this is shocking, but think for a second. This amendment treats a board-certified OBGYN performing an abortion in a sterile medical facility the same as a child sex predator with no medical training performing one on a minor in his mother's basement. Same immunity, same constitutional protection, no distinction. Identical. My colleagues need to explain why this is the language that was chosen. You can protect reproductive freedom without immunizing predators. Those two things don't conflict unless you write a constitutional amendment that makes them conflict. Why go forward on this rushed amendment when there are such obvious flaws? Is this political expediency, or are we trying to get this right? Let's talk about the ballot question. My favorite topic this session. You wrote an amendment that immunizes any individual who aids or assists in the exercise of another's reproductive freedom. Then you wrote a ballot question that tells voters this, quote, protects doctors, nurses, and patients. I guess you could have said doctors, nurses, and patients, etc. Or you could say the more accurate version, which would be this protects any individual. That's what the amendment says, right? So it's kind of humorous that you would use more words to describe what could have just been left as it is written in the amendment. But maybe you didn't like how that sounded. Voters reading this ballot question will think they're protecting medical professionals who are providing legitimate care. They won't know they're also immunizing predators, will they? They won't know they're stripping Virginia of the ability to prosecute someone who recklessly whose reckless conduct causes a woman's injury or death. Virginia won't be able to enforce medical facility safety rules and regulations protecting patients seeking care in this field. They won't be able to hold manufacturers liable for medical devices that cause pain and suffering to our citizens. They won't be able to really hold anyone or anything accountable when aiding or assisting in any form of exercise of said right to reproductive freedom. This leaves zero accountability, which means zero protection for the very people you are seeking to protect. Surely this is not the intent of the amendment. If the other side of the aisle really believed this language defensible, if they believe Virginians would support absolute immunity of any individual, licensed or not, qualified or not, you would have put that ballot question of this on the next November election, right? So why hide this? Why cover this up? At this point, all we can assume is that they chose to write any individual, and they chose to write aiding or assisting without limitation. And they chose to provide absolute immunity with no exceptions for unlicensed conduct, no exceptions for reckless conduct, no exceptions for conduct that kills. And they clearly continue to believe that this is the right language to put to the voters, since I don't see any floor amendments here today. If my colleagues want to defend this deadly flaw, let them defend it honestly here today. Let them stand on this floor and tell Virginia that they believe a child sex predator who causes a teenage girl's death performing an abortion deserves constitutional immunity. Let them say it plainly here today, because that's what this amendment does. And the people of Virginia should know before it is enshrined in our Constitution. I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment, and I urge you to vote no.
Delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, it's interesting that the delegate started off talking about slogans and everything that's political. What he ignores, Mr. Speaker, is that on this House floor, your members introduce abortion bans, the same ones that are happening down south and women are dying. Exact same ones. That's why this constitutional amendment was introduced. Mr. Speaker, I think the delegate does not understand the process for having language on the ballot. There are requirements by the Virginia Code to make sure people understand what they're voting for. Yes. You need to look at the constitutional amendment. We have restrictions, Mr. Speaker. And to suggest that any member of this body would support what he just described is just outrageous. Mr. Speaker, our laws are our laws and they stay in place, but it provides protection for our current law that is in place right now. Mr. Speaker, the VA under the Trump administration has already passed some regulations, some laws, something, and then dark of night on New Year's Eve to restrict access to abortions. This is serious, and ultimately, Mr. Speaker, it's going to go to the voters, and that's what we're going to do. We are going to leave it to the voters to decide whether an individual has the privacy and the protection to have reproductive health care. And let me remind everybody that this is not just about abortion, it's about access to birth control, which the prior administration vetoed Delegate Price's bill to protect access to contraception. And you've heard her sit here and stand here and tell you all over and over why contraception is important. Not only does it prevent a pregnancy, but it is used for other things, other ailments. And pregnancy is not an ailment, but it does do treatment. Mr. Speaker, we have witnessed so much in this nation when it comes to restrictions of abortion. And I ask that this body pass this bill.
House will come to order. Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 64, noes 35.
Ayes 64, noes 35. The bill passes.